We're live. Good evening to you all. Happy Monday. Welcome to tonight's recording of On the Ball, which is as exciting as always, and as exciting as so many things, certainly in the Norwich City world. I'm fully prepared. This babbling on bit will be supremely slick and quick, I'm sure. I will just make sure that I get to share it as and where, which I'm now about to do. All being well. Let me just give you a quick look behind the curtain. There we go. We've got Anna Say on as one of the pod regulars, and making his debut, Nick Dye, who is a long way away. So that's exciting. We'll get to talk about that in a tick. It is the three of us. Please do get any questions and comments into us. We've obviously got a lot to talk about and get through. But as always, I'll try and make it a nice, concise podcast, and we'll see how we get on with that. But there is obviously 4 games to talk about pretty much. I'm just going to share this. So yeah, get your comments and questions in. I will try and monitor those as I go along, which is very exciting. Obviously, I look forward to what you guys have got to say. It's always fun following it on social. No particular topic to flag up this week, although I think Steve has posted his quiz question from last week. He's not on tonight, but we have got his quiz question. So I'm going to come in on that early in the pod, and you can obviously put your answers in for that. So you can throw in some options, and we'll give you the answer later on in the pod. But yeah, other than that, get your questions and comments in, and we'll go through as many as possible. I have almost finished sharing this. I reckon there is 1, 2, 3. Done. How exciting. Right, in that case, barely 2 minutes into the record, I reckon we crack on. So in which case, hope you all enjoy the pod, and I hope you got your questions ready, and we will crack on with those. Righty ho. What was I just looking for? Someone sent me a message that I was going to get in front of me, which was about one of our other questions. Can't find it. We'll do it next week. Let's crack on, shall we? Happy days. Do. Bear with. Let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to edition 109 of On the Ball, the Norwich City podcast that would never get caught short enough it couldn't make the left back in the dressing room joke. I'm Michael Bailey. I cover the Canaries for The Athletic. And of course, I hope this finds you well. On the way, one hull of a clearance. Yeah, I did change the pun slightly. The definition of dominance, and how big a week is it really? We will work through all that and more with our guests this fine Monday evening. And I am delighted to say that they are City fan and budding journalist Anna Say.
Hello.
And on the ball debutant, overseas Norwich fan and professional football coach, Nick Dye.
Good afternoon, everyone.
As you would say from where you are, Nick. Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for everyone out there. Hope everyone is well, of course. How are you guys? Anna, how are you?
I'm doing all right. I wasn't feeling too good yesterday. Heat gave me a bit of a migraine, unfortunately.
Yeah, this is the problem with the heat.
I'm doing better today. I'm powering through this.
Just for the people who are listening rather than viewing, you're wearing one of the Norwich shirts. Is that
the third goalkeeper one, yeah.
The third goalkeeper kit.
Plus I was thinking, a black Norwich shirt might be more apt for what we're going to be talking about.
That's the way. Set the tone. I mean, the bonus is you can also referee in that shirt. Although I don't know how often referees are actually in a black shirt these days. So
that's true.
Moving on. Nick, welcome to On the Ball. How lovely to have you on. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, yesterday was my recovery day. Usually after a Norwich performance, I need a recovery day. And then Monday, I'm back to bright and bubbly and ready to attack the week.
This is lovely. I am trying to instigate this myself as well, professionally and in terms of watching them play. Wonderful for you to join us. Where are you joining us from?
I live in San Francisco, California.
Wow. And what sort of day is it today? Was it as hot as it was here? I think we were on low 30s?
No. Actually, San Francisco is a microclimate, believe it or not. So our summers are usually quite foggy and cold, although everywhere else 10 miles around us is burning hot like the desert.
Beautiful. I'm going to
yeah,
struggle to get my wife. I'm going to struggle to get my wife there on a holiday. Then I would imagine. But there we go. How are you? Thanks for joining us. We should probably find out a bit about you. So let's get some questions in. Obviously, Norwich fan. When did that happen, and how did that happen? In as few words as possible.
As far back as I can remember, really. My dad's a Liverpool fan. Well, he says he's a Liverpool fan. I still think he's a Norwich fan. So my Liverpool kit was kind of first put on me, and then playing the game was a lot of fun. So I became kind of quite a fan of the game, and then started to kind of gradually seep into coming to Norwich games. My first one was in '89, a 0-0 draw versus QPR. All I remember was the scoreboards. I think it was maybe they'd just become digitalized, and there was a robot that kind of moved its hands up and down. That's what I can remember from that.
Sounds right.
And then I started going to more games. Midweek games were a good one because I couldn't make it on the weekends, but my dad was able to take me to midweek games. So when there was 8,000 people in Carrow Road, I was one of them. And then became a season ticket holder through my teens and just, loved every minute of being a Norwich fan. And I've stayed completely addicted to every podcast and every game and everything I can grab my hands on. So even as a professional football coach, I'm assuming Dean Smith's the same with Aston Villa.
I'm sure he is or was. Maybe the job changed him. So how did you end up in the US and also professional football coach? I mean, that's an exciting job.
Yeah, I moved to the US to coach football. So that I was actually working at the Football in the Community program at Norwich Football Club, and then decided to take a jump and move out of Norfolk and go to the States, and then moved from New Jersey to California. Started my own coaching company out here, became a director for an academy, and then just recently started working with a professional team in the third tier of the USA pyramid.
Fantastic, which I think is a highlight of which we shared last season during the podcast.
Sure,
but maybe that was in Wits End. Are we allowed to talk about that? I don't know, but we have now because it doesn't exist anymore. Bless it. Rest in peace, Wits End. Well, Nick, no pressure. We are expecting you to be an expert in all football coaching matters, so no pressure at all. But it's brilliant to have you on. Hopefully, the first appearance of many. I've kept this suitably succinct, so I reckon we just crack on then with a bit of this week's headline act. Yes, indeed. Quite the week. We've had the sublime. Usually that was due to Marcelino Nunez, as well as the ridiculous. And that was at either end of the pitch, especially at Hull. Norwich still winless, I have to say, because I'm not including the Birmingham Cup victory. It was definitely a draw after 90 minutes. But, they've gone through, so that's the exciting thing. Norwich are in the next round of the Carabao Cup, having dispatched Birmingham in midweek before going on to lose 2-1 at Hull. They are now bottom of the Championship and remain winless, which is not a particularly panic stations moment just yet because it's only 3 games. But still, not a suboptimal start, Anna, I suppose you'd call it.
You could say that. I think the problem is that we're starting to see even the most loyal Norwich fans lose their patience at the moment. Last season, it didn't go great. Everyone was desperate for a fast start, and it's going the other way. And every game, it just feels like we're regressing just a little bit more. And I think the biggest problem that everybody, no matter what side you're on, can agree on is the fact that there's no identity. You can't work out what the players are supposed to be doing. And to be honest, it looks like the players themselves don't really know what they're doing. I hate going back to old managers and things like that. But you look at Farker, and win, lose or draw, you knew exactly what he wanted his team to do and what they were aiming for. And this team still yet to see it, and some of the team choices and some of the tactics choices have all just been very odd, and we need to see a little bit more, especially this week. It's a big week coming up.
does feel like a big week, and we'll certainly be talking about the games coming up, Nick. I mean, when you there's a few issues really to get through, but when you see Norwich at Hull, where do you see Dean Smith is at with it? Because he spoke a lot about dominance. I wrote a piece in The Athletic off the back of Saturday's game that you can read, sort of touching into that theme a bit. I mean, I've watched Norwich a lot in the Championship, and people talk about how the team is dominating, yet maybe not winning. I mean, Daniel Farke had it nailed so that Norwich were winning and dominating. But I suppose the biggest question with Dean Smith's side at the moment is what we're watching, a case of progression towards something that will hit its straps, or is it, just sort of bouncing against the top of a ceiling and it can't break through?
I think sometimes with managers it just clicks early, and sometimes it takes a while. Obviously, Dean Smith's been put into a pretty terrible predicament with the squad that was built for last season in the Premier League. For me, I mean, I hear what Anna's saying, where it's difficult to kind of go from a coach who's really laid out his whole platform, communicated it with everyone in the Norwich City community, and steadfast stayed with it the whole time. And now you've got a coach who's maybe not built that rapport with the fans. And I think that's probably more of the problem, because when I see Dean Smith's, I can very quickly assume what his style of play is. If you take Daniel Farke's system of possession, it was the half spaces, he wanted the wide players to come inside and take those half spaces. Like if you imagine a pitch divided into 5 columns, and one in from the outside, that's the half space. So he wanted the 7-11 to occupy that half space, whereas Dean Smith wants his 8 and 10 to occupy that half space and play possession through that, and then try and keep the wide players a little bit wider, which means that the fullbacks don't necessarily get the space that they had under Daniel Farke. So I think the system is pretty clear. He wants to counter press, he wants to add numbers, he wants to build up from the back. I just don't think he's found a formula that has clicked yet, and that may be just toying with player personnel until he gets there. From the way I see it, I see Rashica's a big problem for him, because he's moved him from the left wing to the right wing now. So he's asking him to be something else. He's got Todd Cantwell, who's the X factor in the team, whose stats are way high and been performing excellently, but he's not been able to unlock anything. So it's kind of like, does he go back to basics and go wingers on the outside? And I'm not sure what he's going to do next, but he's either going to have to be patient and risk his job, or he's going to have to make some changes and actually build a rapport with the community of Norwich City fans.
Where would a manager be without
Can I say something quickly?
Absolutely, Anna, please.
Well, I think that my biggest problem is it's a case of things that have been built over several years now being thrown out of the window. I mentioned before we came on air that I had a quote that I'd picked out, and it's a quote from Stuart Webber, like way back early on when he first signed Daniel Farke. And you look at some of those quotes and you go, where did it all go so wrong? But the one I wanted to pick out was he said that if Daniel leaves in 2 years, we'll know who the next head coach is, who will be very similar to Daniel in terms of philosophy. Of course, he'll have slightly different tweaks. So it might be Daniel does zonal marking. New guy might go, actually, I prefer man-to-man. But fundamentally, what can't happen is it can't be that we play football this way and then we bring in a guy who plays football over there, because everything else then just breaks down. And I think we've got a case of Smith is a completely different manager through no fault of his own to Farke. And when they spent so long building one kind of philosophy, spent years on it, everybody in the club went the same way. And now we've got a slightly different regime that seems to be going completely the other way. And I think it's going to take longer than people think to get on board with it if it's going to work. But unfortunately, I don't know that we have the time this time round to get it to work. And that's where I think he's getting these problems.
It was it's very interesting, because if we talk about identity and changing styles and all of those things, I think that all changed really when Norwich got promoted the second time, because even under Daniel Farke, the identity had been lost because of what Norwich felt they needed to do to survive second time around because they felt it didn't work first time. But then curiously, Daniel Farke was effectively sacked because everything was too similar in terms of the processes, yet probably not on the pitch. It wasn't similar enough on the pitch. So, I think that's why the Premier League can eat clubs up quite easily in terms of their culture and what they're trying to do. And I still think some of the current funk is around the problems of that. And Norwich everyone sitting there going, well, I mean, we kind of really want to be good at this level, but I don't know where the hunger is to really go up. I suppose I want to see it. I want to see it on the pitch, and I want to see it from what people communicate.
So I was going to say, the first time round, we didn't exactly put enough into the team and give Farke enough to stay up. You only have to look at the signings from then. Last time round, last season, we did bring in the signings, but then you have to look at recruitment. And when you start picking bits out like that, you go, actually, there's not one person to blame. It's a whole club who puts all this together. Win, lose or draw, everyone has their part to play in terms of blame. And unfortunately, I don't think we're going to hear much from the higher ups. So it seems that Smith is going to be forced to bear the brunt of the anger at the moment through no fault of his own.
Jordan Scott's popped a message in. It says Rashica shouldn't be in the team again, which I would imagine is probably in terms of the week coming up. I mean, when you look at Milot, Nick, the things he does well, which, he's supposed to be a really good ball carrier, we're not seeing really much of that. We probably saw it in the first 4 minutes at Cardiff, and then he got fouled about 4 times in the next 5 minutes, and that was sort of the end of him there. Where do you sort of view the performance he put in on Saturday?
Woeful. I think he's fantastic. He was great in the Premier League because he was given space and he was allowed to have 1v1s. In the Premier League, typically teams won't gang up on you because they'll trust the individual defending from individual players. So he had a lot more 1v1 situations and obviously a lot more counter-attacking behaviours because Norwich sat deeper because teams wanted to keep the ball against us. So I think he was bought for the Premier League. I think he's an awful fit for the Championship. I think he's going to get doubled up. He's going to lose the ball regularly. He's not a great recoverer in terms of putting in the shift to get back into the line he's supposed to be on. He's not a fantastic counter-presser. He's not going to fit. And I think this is another reason why Dean Smith's moved him out onto the right, because he's gone, well, you're really, really quick. You can beat people 1v1. Just get it around the outside and whip it in hard. And so he's done that. And I think it was at the Celtic game where we scored from a moment where he did that. And then since then, he's kind of tried to keep going with that process of putting him on the right. And clearly he's not comfortable there. I just don't think he's a great fit. I think any kind of money we can get for him is going to be fantastic. Unless we can hold on and hope that we go up again and somehow he reignites his form in the Premier League. I don't see it.
Yeah, it was the Marseille friendly, I think, where that happened. But he was in and out of it during pre-season, which is fair to say. And again, we'll talk about the games coming up because it'd be interesting to hear people's opinions on who they would start with. We had Dean Smith's press conference earlier this morning, which was always a pleasure to be at, of course. I think the answer to the question I asked him has been doing the rounds on social media today, which was basically, and someone had brought it up. Yeah, I can't remember who it was. Well, probably not one. Lots of people, given I have various different ways of communicating with people. We have the match day discussion over at The Athletic around every game as well. But someone said, Dean Smith arrived, and one of the first things he said was he wanted to make Norwich hard to beat, which didn't really work in the Premier League, but there was mitigation if you want it. But also 3 games into the Championship, Norwich have lost twice when really it's sort of maybe inexplicable that they should have lost twice given the state of the goals. Now, I think his answer is coming in for a bit of criticism. What did you make of what he said, Anna? Because in some ways, it's a very difficult question to answer because some of the goals have been so entirely haphazard.
It is a difficult one. Obviously, the players on the pitch have to take part of the blame for what's happened. Some of the goals conceded have been atrocious. Some of the chances we have had, you wonder how they've missed it. It's the old cliche, it's probably harder to miss. But the build-up play and the possession play, a lot of that has been really good, and that's been the positives that a lot of people have taken out of the matches. And when you see that build-up play, it is hard for teams to get in, but we're completely weak on the counter-attack, which is where those goals are coming from when we concede them. So it's about not being caught on the counter-attack, and it's about taking our chances and having slightly better decision-making, which isn't exactly a new thing in this Norwich side, unfortunately. And I don't think that would take a lot to change it. I think there needs to be slightly better choices when it comes to who he puts in the team. I mean, in the last match, I was baffled as to why Hugo couldn't even get on the bench, because apparently there was more attacking options ahead of him. And Gibbs, who was fantastic in the cup match, was only on the bench as well. Sinani, I forget how to pronounce his name, but
yeah, Sinani.
He was on the bench as well. And I think these are the kind of players who are going to be suited more to the way that he wants his team to play. So I think have those little tweaks, and I believe that then they will become more difficult to beat. At the moment, we're very predictable. Even though he is chopping and changing things here, there, and everywhere, it's still very predictable what we're trying to do and where our weakest points are. And so if we don't change anything quickly, we'll constantly get caught on the counter-attack. We'll make those silly mistakes, those unforced errors, and we'll carry on being beat, even if he thinks we're still being hard to beat.
We should mention Marcelino Nunez, of course, because he scored a wonderful free kick on Saturday. Had a slightly curious game, I thought, because he started off really well, as the rest of the team did. In fact, maybe he followed the ebb and flow of the team, because the middle bit was quite tricky, and then I think he was playing slightly higher up later on in the game and started to really affect things and grab hold of them as well. So, and obviously we had the Panenka against Birmingham, which was remarkable for a shootout penalty. Nick, I'll check your connection's okay, because you look a bit stuck. So we'll see how this goes. But I mean, for all the criticism of recruitment, it does look like Norwich have found someone with some proper quality in Marcelino.
Yeah, my connection is working well. Marcelino Nunez.
Just about.
Okay, I actually went back and watched. This is how big of a Norwich fan I went back into Footballia and watched a couple of Marcelino Nunez's games in the Copa de Libertadores in his league, and I was really worried because the standard of that football it's rough. It's glorified Sunday league, I think, and I was a bit worried that they've seen a really bright spark in a really terrible league, and he won't be able to adapt. But clearly the scouts have done their due diligence, and a player that they've seen with a very, very high ceiling, and that's what we've seen almost straight away. That there's definitely a ceiling there. I mean, I think there's certain nuances to him that he's to adapt to. We saw him on the weekend. At one point, he got stuck in it right back on the ball and kind of couldn't twist and turn his way out of it, even though he's got fantastic to create in situations. So the speed of the game might take a while, but I really like what Norwich fans have got there.
Yeah, he does look like a proper player. Still early days, though, obviously, but we certainly the signs are promising, which is good, because with some players that Norwich have signed, we haven't quite had that, even early promising signs. Nick, just check your connection, because it was a bit stuttery on that last answer, so I'll come back to you in a tickle. It's Norwich at home to Bournemouth in the second round of the Carabao Cup, which is a remarkable case of drawing etiquette, I suppose. So we'll see how that plays out. I think I've covered off most of the things from the two games. We'll see if Daniel Sinani and anyone else, for that matter, gets their opportunity to shine in the coming games. And we will obviously speak about those in a moment. Let me just try and get some more of these comments and questions we had. James Hotchkiss, can anything be read into the fact that Norwich haven't won in the Championship since Twittercus was canned? Don't know what you're talking about, James. Obviously, don't know what you're talking about. But yes is the answer. Yes, which is all good. Michael Rayner. I think we should try and use Todd Cantwell, obviously, as a CAM. I guess that's the number 10, really, isn't it, Nick? I mean, is that his best position, do you reckon?
He'll probably say it is. I still think that the way Dean Smith wants to play is he wants to get his two centre midfielders on the ball, turning, playing forwards. I think Todd wants to go into different spaces and find different channels and beat people here and there. I think that he's going to be much more suited to the left-hand side under Dean Smith.
There were still one or two moments, I thought, at Hull where one or two players were getting in each other's way. And that's never really a good sign, because it means that they're doing the similar jobs, or they haven't knitted together well enough to know that they don't want to be in the same space as each other. It's interesting because, again, speaking to Dean Smith this morning, I asked him whether he'd had a past experience of a team needing games to click. And I suppose in a typical managerial media trained answer, he didn't answer that question. He basically said, well, I don't think we need time to click. So maybe it's a case of finding rhythm, but he doesn't feel that it's about clicking, which I was interesting, because that was kind of one of the caveats for the opening 3 performances and results. So, but there we go. Simon Copperwheat, good evening, Michael, Anna and Nick. 2 seasons ago, I remember you stating, probably me, that the quality of the teams in the Championship was less compared to the previous seasons. Is it the opposite this time around? I mean, I have to say, Anna, Norwich have played 3 Championship teams. I think Hull have got a chance of finishing in the top 10 and pushing for a playoff place. I thought the other 2 were, I've already said it a few times, probably about, lower, middle of the lower half quality, if not lower. So no, I think it's still as bad. I think Norwich's level is lower so far. What do you think, Anna?
I think there's more teams with a chance of finishing into top 6 than there might have been in the last couple of seasons. I think there will be some tough matches, especially you look at the teams that have come down with us as well. They're always going to be the difficult ones. But I think where some people might try and use that as an excuse to excuse our own performances, but I think it's the old cliche, we just need to focus on ourselves. We can only beat what's in front of us. If it's a tough match, if it's not such a tough match, doesn't matter. We just got to play our own game. And I think that's one thing that we haven't been doing so far. We've been adapting to what the other team has been doing rather than going, this is how we're playing. It's up to you to come beat us. And I want to see more of that.
Jonah Lossier, Canaries across the pond. Absolutely love to see it. Cheers from North Carolina. That's one for you there, Nick. Which is grand. And now I think, we'll get onto this in a bit, but Paul Clark says, if we don't win the next 2 games, he must go. So there we go. He must go. Right, now is a good point to bring up the fact that obviously Mr. NCFC Numbers, Steve Sanders, is not with us tonight. That's absolutely fine. But of course, I will always miss him. But he did promise a quiz question. So you're all going to be absolutely delighted to know that he has sent a voice note. In fact, he sent 2, but we'll leave the second one until the end because that's the reveal. So let's introduce to you, as if in the ether, Mr. Steve Sanders, aka NCFC Numbers number 1 chief. Let's introduce his voice on its own. No pictures. Wow.
Hi, Michael. Hi, everyone. And apologies to those who are hoping they would get the week off without hearing my voice. But a promise is a promise. We said there would be a quiz question. Here comes the quiz question. So it concerns our new free kick specialist, Marcelino Nunez. It's a slightly adapted one from last week, actually. But I'm sure all Norwich City fans like me were hugely excited to find out that we had signed a player with all 5 vowels in his name, i.e. across both his names, A-E-I-O-U. Just to remind you there, just in case you need a reminder. So Nunez on Saturday became the third Norwich City player since 2010 to have scored a goal for the club with all 5 vowels in his name. Can you name the other 2? Now, there are a couple of players who were just before 2010. I'm not going to say who they are, but they just missed out. And one of the 2 players is known by Norwich City fans more affectionately with a slightly shorter name. So there's a little clue for you. So that's my question. And you'll have until the end of the pod, I guess. Depends how Michael wants to break it up. And just another quick question for the panel and for anyone else listening. Dean Smith referred to Jakob Sørensen on Tuesday night as Mr. Utensil. So I was just wondering if the panel had any advances on kitchen utensil based puns on Jürgen Colander, because that's the best that I can do, but I'm sure that those on the panel, including yourself, Michael, will be able to do much better. Very best of luck.
How lovely to hear Steve's voice until he said Jürgen Colander. Brilliant. So the quiz question, get your thinking caps on. See if you can think of the answer, which is the 2 goal scorers for Norwich with every vowel in their name since 2010, I think it was, and a couple of near misses. I think that was the question. But also, I miss Dean Smith calling Jakob Sørensen Mr. Utensil, which is amazing. So we need your kitchen utensil based Norwich puns. Now, Anna and Nick, I haven't given either of you a warning on that. So you're more than welcome to have a few moments and to put your hands up or just throw one out as soon as you have one. Likewise, everyone watching, you got 2 answers there. So get your answers in for both. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 cooking or utensil puns written down before me. Obviously, I could give you one now, which I've got, which is Matthias Svensson. Svensson, horrible one. That's the worst of the 4, I can safely say. Nick, your face lit up as if you've come up with one.
How about Rule Forks?
Oh, Rule Forks. Come on. Lovely work. Keep them coming. You guys, Anna, you too, and also anyone listening in. Simon Copperwheat's throwing one in. Simeon Jackson. But I don't get it. Jack. Oh, that's the other one. I see. Yes, that's obviously the vowels. Close. No cigar. I am going to get probably confused by these, aren't I? But that's a good effort, Simon. Your first effort in. We might have some potential right answers, but obviously I couldn't give that away, could I? So I'm going to just note them down. I don't think it's an answer, but Simon just says "blimey," which is something I often say, in fairness, Simon. So that's all grand. Oh, I pressed the wrong button there. There we go. And there was one. Adam Leventhal. Hello, Adam. He's clearly got a quiet night on. Teapot Pookie. So good. I had to share it, Adam. Top work.
I think every vowel is on that as well. No.
Oh, it is. Wow. He's literally answered 2. That's why Adam operates on a completely different level. So there you go. All the vowels and the utensil pun. You've done both in one go. Adam, I salute you always, but especially just then. Right. In which case, shall we move on to things we are not going to talk about? This is really quick fire, just the things we're not going to talk about, but obviously we'll end up briefly mentioning them because that's what we do. So think about one if you want one. Anna, Nick, throw them out. The first thing I'm going to say, Pierre Lesmelou scoring a wonderful volley, I think it was. It was certainly a long-range effort for Brest. And I shared it on Twitter, the clip. Listen for Jonathan Pearce's commentary because he says right at the end of it, what do you make of that, Norwich fans? It's like, yeah. Oh, he did score. He did score one from the edge of the area, deflected against Burnley, which is one of the few games we won. So we can't criticize him too much, can we, Anna?
Yeah, well, you could say the same about Scholes scoring and about Pajeta scoring as well.
Well, we could. All I will say is that Christian Scholes Charlotte scored 2 goals when I think Twente were already 4-2 up in a 2-legged Conference League qualifier. So I'll wait and reserve judgment on Christos. And the other one, well, Przemysław Pojeta. Most Norwich fans think he's rubbish and wouldn't have him anywhere near the current side. So I have, it's up to him to go away and show what he can do. But fair play to him. I keep thinking there's something in there to work with. And as I'll keep saying, there are not many Norwich players currently on the books who are going to go to the World Cup potentially in Qatar. And if Przemysław Pojeta is one of them, someone said to me the other day, Norwich haven't got much pace. It's like, well, but again, I have watched Shemek play, so I do get both sides. Just saying. For him, I say.
I hate to hog it, but not just players, maybe Daniel Farke doing really well in the Bundesliga.
Should we not talk about that? Well, in fairness, they drew 2-2 at a promoted Schalke. So, and they were 2-1 up.
They've come back a couple of times, haven't they, from behind, which it would not be new with him.
Well, Norwich have done it once at home to Wigan. Newly promoted Wigan. What more do you want at home? I'm joshing to a degree. Nick, anything you don't want to talk about?
The 5 subs rule being good for the better teams, which it's absolutely not.
This is true. Well, Dean Smith only made 4 subs, didn't he, on Saturday? He wasn't even bothered with it. I'll leave it alone. Left back crisis. Obviously, we're not going to talk about that. We probably should. We're not going to do 5 minutes on it, Steve, as much as you want us to. I just feel really sorry for Sam McCullum, obviously, who broke his 5th metatarsal in his foot in the Birmingham game, which seemed quite innocuous. Then Jakob Sørensen tries to win a header. They think he goes over on his ankle, but actually it's a stress fracture of his foot. And he's going to be out for several weeks as well. And
what is a stress fracture?
Well, to be honest, I was going to ask Nick. Have you come across many stress fractures in your professional coaching career?
Not so many, but I'm guessing stress is from constant force. So it's a fracture that's come through force, which means it might not be on the surface; it might be internal.
And initially in my head, it makes me think it's about loading and therefore is in some way preventable. But I think that's probably not necessarily the case, because you wouldn't be able to pick up on it if everything feels okay. And I guess something maybe then prompts it.
Wasn't it last season that Omar Bamadeli had a stress fracture in his back?
And I know he has since said that he was grateful for the rest and recovery time for his body to kind of adjust and for him to work on that strengthening. But again, I suppose a stress issue in the back maybe is slightly different to having one in the foot, and it would obviously depend on where in the foot it is. It just seems such bitterly bad luck, because Jakob is going to get to play some minutes as well. So Norwich do not have a left back at the club, or at least not a recognised one, so to speak. They have been looking to get one in the market, but I think that's really difficult because you're looking at only loaning someone probably until January. So that makes it a little bit tricky, although if you haven't actually got a left back, maybe a little bit easier. I don't know. It will be fascinating, and we'll get onto this in a bit, who Dean Smith opts and how Dean Smith opts to deal with that situation. I did just want to mention, but I don't want to talk about, the Canaries Trust becoming the 6th largest shareholder in Norwich City now, after they bought the shares off my former employer, Archant, or their administrators. That's quite interesting for how that develops in terms of fan involvement. Whether the Tracy Crouch report will ever get to this point where clubs have to have that representation on the board, it's probably a moot point. We'll see. But it's great for the Canaries Trust to be in that position.
Right. Speaking of the shares, is there any update on the old American investors?
Well, we're still in the few weeks period. So carry on with a few weeks, I say. There is an explainer on The Athletic, which if you'd like to read that from a couple of weeks ago, which was less than a few weeks, that was a couple of weeks. And you can catch up and check in on what that says. And hopefully that paints a clear picture of where we are and maybe where we're going. I did just want to say thoughts and, the thoughts of everyone here and everyone on the podcast, not just me, are with family and friends of Roger Harris, 30 years Norwich City photographer, did wonderful work that I recall in all sorts of mediums seeing, and a lovely guy as well. He passed away, I think it was this week. So yeah, thoughts with everyone, and I'm sure they're immensely proud of the what Roger did in terms of documenting Norwich City history with his camera. So he will be missed, I'm sure, but what a legacy for him to leave behind, especially for his friends and family. I did just want to say Hull reintroduced me to the concept of Championship Wi-Fi 4G. For some reason, working in Championship stadiums, they find it very difficult to have working Wi-Fi that connects with particular strength, but also the grounds usually block out 4G. So can't wait for a continuation of that over the remaining 21.
We have Wi-Fi now at Carrow Road, don't we?
Well, we have Premier League facilities, which is good in a way. Anything else anyone does want to talk about? If not, we shall move on. Happy? All right, in that case, let's move on to a bit of Motti, shall we? Come on then, Motti, bring it on.
This is almost fantasy football.
Yes, indeed. What says fantasy football quite like a week of 2 games at Carrow Road against Huddersfield and then Millwall. We've already said how big a week it is. I mean, I don't think I'm going to be able to bring myself to watch the recap of what happened the last time Huddersfield came to Norwich because it probably make me a bit sad. But it was obviously one of the most incredible performances I've seen. Was still with an empty ground, which I think this season is becoming quite a stark comparison with what Norwich did 2 years ago, especially. At least Huddersfield, who have got their own struggles, won home to Stoke and they've won their first game. So that's good. It gets it out of their system, he says, like a true fan. I mean, what do we need from this, Anna? What have we got to see from this game on Tuesday?
We just need to see better decision making, I think, and that's not only from people on the pitch, it's from people off the pitch as well. Because on the pitch, we've seen already we've had so many chances in these games. It's not like last season when we weren't getting a lot of chances, and then when we did get the chances, we weren't scoring them. Wasn't it something in the Wigan match like we had 22 shots or something and only 1 goal, which was a terrible conversion rate, just awful. So we need to see a bit more of that better decision making, but also off the pitch when it comes to Dean Smith, I'd like to see a bit more understanding of like where he's going with the team decisions and the tactic decisions, because I thought it was incredibly unfortunate and unfair to keep somebody like Kugel out of the squad. I get it if he doesn't want to start him, that's his own choice, but not to even have him on the bench. I think we have to see Gibbs in starting because he's looked brilliant in the cup match. He's looked brilliant when he's come on. He seems to really invigorate the team around him. And just a bit more intensity and fight from everybody from the team, a bit more emotion from Dean Smith, a bit more fight from him. Bit more passion and fight from the players as well, because you do that and you know that the fans are going to get behind them. So just everybody pulling together, everybody on the same page, everybody going for those wins this week.
I like that idea. Nick, who would you play?
I mean, Dean Smith's got to really, because he could just change the system and there's your excuse, right? The fans are against you. You play. It's something's not clicking. Whatever it is, you can go back and fix those issues, but you're still going to be stuck at left back. So the chances of him going to 3 at the back and maybe playing O'Neill and Max as the wide players, I think it's possible. I don't like O'Neill as a left back, but I could see him playing left wing back. So there's potential that he might just flip and change the system. I actually think. And I don't think this doesn't help us with left back, but I'd love to know what Craig Shakespeare's record is playing 4-4-2, because I mean he won the league at Leicester doing it, and then he done it with Norwich, and I think we done quite well playing 4-4-2. I mean, we didn't do that well that season, but part of me is trying to kind of think what they're talking about behind the scenes. And I think Craig Shakespeare's going, go on, Dean, let me go 4-4-2. Go on, let me have a crack at it. I promise you, we'll get some. And he's going, no, we've got to, Norwich is where, Daniel Farker built this system. We're going to play 4-3-3. We're going to buy these players to build this project. So, yeah, I don't know where he's going to go with left back or formations. I think if he does deviate from the 4-3-3 to accommodate not playing a left back, it's a good out for him. It's a nice out.
It's really interesting that, because I think at the Smith and Shaky night I spoke a bit about that Leicester team with Craig and the fact that he left 3 players up on the halfway line whenever they had a corner, basically, and which was just, sort of a bit mind blowing at the time, but it worked so well for them. And it probably is a bit interesting they haven't played 4-2-4 or 4-4-2 yet. But I guess, I mean, Anna, if Carrow Road was watching something more direct like that in the Championship, I kind of feel like at the moment the mood would almost be like, oh look, he's just gone completely now. We're just playing Route 1 style. Even if they won 1-0, they probably wouldn't take. I don't know. Is that fair? Am I being?
Well, I think before there was a couple of injuries last season, they started to do the 2 at front. I think it was it Ida and Pookie who he was putting up front, and it looked brilliant. And all of a sudden we were going, hang on a minute, this is starting to work. And then Ida got injured and everything seemed to just fall apart again. So it's not like it's a completely out of the question, untested thing. And I think that might help Pookie as well to have a bit more support up there, because at the moment he's getting nothing and I think he's frustrated, and whatever they're doing at the moment isn't suited to him. So having a bit more support up there would actually, I think, get him the ball a little bit more. So I think Norwich fans can be sometimes that they'll go with whatever's getting the result. 1-0, 5-0, whatever. As long as it's a win, I don't think a lot of people care, especially at this time. We just need the results, and then you can build on making it look a little bit nicer.
I always think about Chris Hughton when that question comes up. Always come up with Chris Hughton in my head. I mean, the 7-0 is an interesting one, because someone mentioned that Huddersfield would probably quite fancy getting revenge on Norwich for that. A, it was a long time ago, so they've probably forgotten. But I mean, B, Dean Smith is not going to be in any way aware of that. Kind of interesting that he did get asked again about Danel Sinani not featuring, and that maybe he will now feature against Huddersfield because he was there on loan last year and he might fancy a bit to prove, which would be interesting. Obviously, we then have Millwall on Friday night, which Norwich drew 0-0 with Millwall twice 2 years ago. So anyone thinking, oh, that'll be a feisty one. I mean, it might be feisty, but probably not going to be anything spectacular. We'll have to see. It will be really interesting how Dean Smith deals with it and how he opts to play it. And I can't really guess. I think I've got about 5 options for what he might do at left back, and I'm not sure if I can work out which out of all of them we might get to see.
Go through them. So Kenny, Gibson, O'Neill.
Kenny at left back, Ben Gibson at left back. You could play someone like Jonathan Tompkinson at right back and then switch Max over to left back. You could start Sam Byram, which I really hope he doesn't do, and he did say he wouldn't do, just because the poor guy has had no preseason and feel like a.
Would Tompkinson be in there? He's just been in the under-21s match, hasn't he?
He was, but he only played the first 45 minutes, and they'll be back from Leeds. So potentially, yeah, maybe not ideal. Maybe they rung him in to come off at half time because you're gonna go play it right back. I don't know. I mean, it seems strange they would have let him to go up and play if he was in their minds for it already. He did play it right back.
I do want to see more of him at some point. I think he's a very good player. I do want to see more of him.
Definitely, yeah. No, I really like him as well. I mean, Regan Riley played left back a couple of times in pre-season. Liam Gibbs has dropped back to left back a couple of times, who I thought did well when he came on, by the way, at Hull, and has absolutely been nowhere near letting anyone down so far. I can see Ben Gibson playing there. I feel like that's most likely.
Does he
he's probably got the most left back experience. And I don't know a bit like you really, Nick. I don't know if I can see him changing to a starting formation that he hasn't really played any of pre-season really in terms of back three. But I'm sure they would have done some work on it. But that would probably suit the players better. So
it's a nice reset sometimes.
Yeah. Hey.
It doesn't take long to just build a formation in training and say, okay, these are your roles and responsibility. It's not something you need to spend 3 months building. It's, here's your roles and responsibilities. This is our shape. This is your job. This is your job. I mean, it's not, I'd say it's probably easier to do that than it would be to say, all right, go 4-3-3 again, play against a terrible team and go knock them out of the park. Can't see it happening.
No,
I mean, Dean Smith did say recently that you get so many different styles in the Championship, and that he wants to build a team that's prepared for all of them. So I would assume that would come with preparing them in different formations as well.
100%. And I think, as Nick says, they'll kind of know what would be needed of them. Maybe that's a bit of my own hangover from the past head coach, that if you didn't play something in pre-season, you knew you were probably not going to see it. But it will be fascinating. And to be honest, whenever I tend to get asked about shapes, the reply from Dean Smith says it doesn't really matter because it's more about what the players do, which is probably true in reality. Right, yeah, I think that was all the options, and then so 3 at the back and the wing backs with Anel and Max, I suppose, would be your wing backs, which is probably the other variety. So I was just going to see what other questions we had, but I mean, they are 2 big games. Let's hope and pray that we see at least one victory out of them, because that would be good.
Can I ask a question?
Oh yeah, please do, Anna.
I know that obviously I don't know how you do it, but you have eyes all over the club and ears all over the club. And at the end of last season, you outlined exactly what Farker had asked for in terms of the transfer window and what he very much did not get. And have you heard anything about what Smith has asked for in the window compared to what he's got? Or is that something you won't hear till later on?
Yeah, I've heard bits and pieces. But sometimes it's about the moments to share them, I suppose. There are things you can share and things you can't, probably, like, constantly. And I think, that the piece that went up at the end of last season was basically a year's worth of work. So,
and it was a brilliant piece, I'll say that.
Thank you very much. I hope I have to write a happier one this time around.
Is it on par with what he's wanted, or is it veering quite off? That's all I'll ask.
I think if you sat Dean Smith down, he would want more. He would want to change more. But ultimately, there is only so much he can do. And in a way, he's done quite well out of it, because he's managed to get a few players in, and yet the squad is still pretty big. So there hasn't been much going out. So he had to have some way of putting his own stamp on the group of players to a degree. So he's got that. And now it's up to him to balance that off, really. And the players that he picks have got to deliver, because it's going to become hard with such a big group of players. If people aren't delivering on the pitch, or the team aren't winning, to go, oh no, I've still got total faith in this 11. It's like, well, boss, they haven't won a game yet, so it's going to become harder. And he can tell Jordan Hugill before the whole game, it's horses for courses, you're not in the 18. But if they then lose the next 2 games, then it's like, well, which course am I running? So it's and that's without Adamida coming back. I mean, we should all probably do it. Norwich got 2 games coming up. Draw a squad, put your 11 in, put your 7 substitutes in, and then see who you've got not in the squad, and think about how those players will be here and they'd be wanting to play, and they're not even on the bench. And then what do you do? Do you change that out? Well, if you do change it out, who are you dropping out? Some of them will be easy. I think everyone will probably drop Milot straight out of their, 19 at the moment, or 20. But that's fine for one. But is that long term? I mean, you've got a £9.5 million player there. So what do you do? And that is why Dean Smith gets paid to do the job he does. But it's an interesting exercise to work through, definitely. A couple of other questions. John F. Howard. Anna, always a real delight listening to this well-informed young lady. There you go. I'm with you, Anna. More fight and passion needed, which is grand. Simon Duarte, Gibbs looks hungry. Every team wants hungry players. It's a bit like you were saying, Nick. I mean, these opportunities do just come along, and let's remember that Teemu Pukki wasn't going to play up top on his own until Norwich decided to change it and actually mix it up against Middlesbrough, 4 years ago, whatever it was. So there we go. I'm sure we'll be due a debate over Teemu Pukki at some point, but we're not going to have that tonight.
I think Teemu's first game, he played on the right of a 3 behind Jordan Rhodes, right?
Indeed.
Yeah. Can you imagine him playing there anymore? Not a chance. So yeah, sometimes players just come in, do a job, and it makes the manager's job really easy. And hopefully
someone did suggest to me that he should be tried there again, and I kind of replied with the fact I've not really seen him have a particularly good game in those positions compared to him being up top. on his own.
So many lone players that I miss. I miss Jordan Rhodes. I really liked him.
Well, you're going to get to see him on Tuesday, Anna. So there you go. That's exciting. Jason Hayden, we are playing well. I think we just lack cutting edge and a bit of lady luck. Should be looking to replace Pookie as he is aging before our eyes, Jason, some would say. Bless him.
I don't think that's about him aging. I said it before. I don't think we're playing to his strengths. We're not getting him the ball at all, not getting him any service. And I think he looks frustrated.
I agree. Sorry, Nick. I was going to say I thought some of the criticism of Tamer was pretty harsh, to be honest. Interesting situation with him as well, because he had a pain in his foot after the game on Saturday. He went for an X-ray, but Dean Smith is completely happy he'll be fit for tomorrow. I mean, I'm a little bit more worried, but hopefully the X-rays come back and everything's fine by now. Maybe just throwing out one of those doubtful bits. Anyway, sorry, Nick, I cut you off there.
No, I think that's part of Daniel Farke's brilliance. Everyone assumed he was a high possession-based team that's going to work the ball forwards and add numbers. But the reality was he went high possession until he felt the press. Then they got the ball to Emmy, who sent it through to Pookie. So it's kind of moving the opposition's backline higher by playing deeper versus Dean Smith, where you're seeing a lot more trying to build up through adding numbers in high areas, which leaves you susceptible to the counter-attack, which we've obviously seen. And then we've also got two centre-backs, one who's very young and quite aggressive. I mean, we saw that with his booking, I think it was at the weekend. And Grant Hanley, we know, is an extremely aggressive towards the ball player, although he's quite intelligent with it. That's a recipe for disaster. Playing, and we can teach them patience. But that's another reason why I think things are not going well. And there's a little bit, it's not a really settled back four. Another reason why you might see Max making those types of mistakes is because what he's got behind him, there's not that comfort and trust in the way we're defending against, certainly against the counter-attack.
That was the biggest thing in previous years, consistency and trust in each other. And I still don't think that that's there. And I don't think they're communicating enough with each other as well. And I just think once they've settled in the team and they've got a bit more consistency about them, I'm sure things will start to pick up.
Fingers crossed for that moment when it all picks up. I reckon finally then, Kenny Other Business. If anyone has got anything else they want to bring up, Kenny Other Business, that is the section we are in. Just pop your hand up, guys, if you've got something you want to go on.
Yeah, I want to talk about Kenny McLean.
Oh, in Kenny Other Business. Scenes.
Yeah, if it's his first season with us, he was backup right in the Championship. Then we go to the Premier League. He actually is probably one of our better players after lockdown, I think.
Yeah.
Then we go back to the Championship and he starts, but we're kind of winning games because of Emmy, let's be honest. There's no way that those team performances deserve to win as many games as they did. And so I think we need to let him go a little bit. And that kind of hurts me because I think Dean sees him as a leader and someone who brings enthusiasm. But I think it's hurting. I think it's hurting the fans' connection with the team that's playing, and I think it's hurting Kenny. And I think we just need to let him go back to being a backup and that leader, versus starting every minute of every game, where we don't necessarily look like we need leaders when we're playing. I think what we need to see when we're playing is players adjusted to the system.
Well, you might get to see him playing at left back on Tuesday, Nick. But it's really interesting. It will be interesting how the midfield dynamic develops over the next sort of 2-3 months as well, because theoretically you have a midfield three that doesn't need to involve Kenny because you've got Sarah, Nunez, and Hayden. So those three have been brought in because presumably Dean Smith and the recruitment team view them as better options than what Norwich had available to them. So it'll be interesting to see how Kenny's role develops. I remember that first season, certainly the second half of the campaign, he did start regularly. And I remember going through each game going, I might replace Kenny in that 11, but it never happened. And every so often he'd chip in with some goals and, he'd have a real contribution. But he does seem to be someone where I think, maybe not a lot of supporters don't necessarily have that faith in him. And also I think Kenny kind of senses that. I remember when we spoke to him after the Celtic game, he was sort of talking about, him playing in different roles. And he sort of said, look, whatever fans think about how good I am, they'll know I'll always give everything, whichever role I play at. And I just thought that's you acknowledging that it seeps through that players are like, oh, Kenny, which, is probably the prevailing opinion with a lot of supporters. And that's a shame because unless everyone pulls together in one direction, Norwich are not going to go anywhere particularly fast this year. But
also you talk about things like connections to the fans and things like that, and I think that's something you can look at through the whole club. There's a reason people are struggling to let go of the previous few years, because there was a very clear idea, not just on the pitch, but throughout the whole club. You knew what they were trying to build, you knew what direction they were going. Even in that first season, when it wasn't particularly special, although fans grumbled about what happened, most kind of went, okay, yeah, we can see what they're trying to do. Yeah, I can see that we probably need a transitional season. And it's not nice to accept, but that's what we accepted at the time, because we could see where things were going. We could see the identity they were trying to build. They sorted out the training facilities. You could see there was better attitude amongst the players. They all got on, and there was so much connection. And like Stuart Webber at the very beginning was like, oh yeah, we're going to be really open and honest. That's a huge value for me, because you have to be honest with people even if they don't like it, because then you've told them and they can accept it. If you keep lying, that'll come back and bite you. And all of these very strong values that they set out at the very beginning seems to have just been completely thrown out of the window. And I feel like at the moment, the club identity seems to have regressed massively, and we need to see something change. Otherwise, people carry on holding on to those previous glory years. And if things don't change, unfortunately, whether it's his fault or not, Dean Smith might end up on borrowed time.
Let's address the other questions set by Steve, shall we? Again, if you've got any Mr. or Mrs. Utensil puns, throw them forward. I've got some other ones. Danel Binani, obviously, for when you're getting rid of your rubbish. Marcelino Spunez, for stirring things up, and then you probably need to flatten things, in which case you could use your John Rowling pin. So that's what I've got. Anna, Nick, have you got any other ones? Silence.
I've got the vowels one. I've not written it out.
Wait for that. Wait for that. Right, we'll get to those. We'll get to those, Nick.
Would you class a bib as a kitchen thing?
Yes. Why not? Yeah, for a baby.
Liam Bibbs.
Liam Bibbs. There we go. Love it. Stephen Stibbins. Dave Strainer, which I think works. Yoddy Toddy. Jens Bertel Askewer. Love that. Paul Frake. Duncan Fawkes. Which is lovely. James Hotchkiss, Ian Butterdish, which is very good. Daryl Rowland, Emmy Blenderia. I think that works. It's just as good as Matthias Sivensen, so I'll give you that one. Brilliant. So I think we've exhausted that list, but if anyone has got any more Mr. Utensil puns, including you, Steve, because I think, sorry, I've already forgotten about you, Jürgen Collender. If you've got any of your Mr. Utensil puns, please do get them in. You can email the podcast, Twitterkers, Twitter, KERS, @iCloud.com.
So is that something you're going to carry on?
Yeah, indeed. Or you can DM me with them, because we could have a full array of kitchen Norwich City utensils by the end of the season. Let's see if we can get more than Norwich get points. And then, of course, we have Steve's quiz question. We will hear from Steve in a tickle, but let's just see, what did we have in terms of suggestions? Oh, Nick, what were your suggestions?
I was thinking Giannoulis has got to be close. Dimitris Giannoulis.
Oh, he's missing an E. but he is close. He's got
Oh,
four
you're
of
right.
them.
It's
He's
an
got
I,
four of them. Just some suggestions, in no way suggesting they're right or wrong immediately. James Hotchkiss, Jamie Curitan for the vowels, he says. Josh Butler says, Bacani, maybe.
Didn't the other guy come up with the answer when you put in the question?
Who's that?
He came up with the kitchen pun, and it was technically an answer at the same time.
Oh, well, yeah. Adam Leventhal and his Teapot Pookie. Yeah. By the way, for the puns, Shiv Patel says Max Aprons. Which goods? That's good, isn't it? Okay, well, I'll tell you what. In that point, let's hear from Steve, shall we? Go on then, Steve.
Hello again, and congratulations on an absolute triumph of a podcast, guys. Really, really love the bit where Michael complained about the 4G at Hull Stadium and the 5-minute skit that you did on the curse of the Norwich City left back. So great work all round. Anyway, answers to the quiz question from the start of the pod. There have been 3 goal scorers for Norwich City since the year 2010 who have had all 5 vowels in their name. One is Marcelino Nunez. You get that one for free. Who were the other 2? The answers are the lone star from the Alec Neil Premier League season, maybe star is pushing it, Diamersi Mbakani, and this is the one whose name is generally shortened, but if you were to take his full name, he would have all 5 vowels, Emiliano Buendia. The 2 that just missed out, this was not part of the quiz, but just in case you care, Owen Tudor-Jones and Jamie Curitan both scored for Norwich City in 2009. Anyway, on the ball, City, 3 points tomorrow. Speak soon.
Well said, Steve. And thank you for setting the quiz question, which I think we all thoroughly enjoyed. It was worth the wait because I did, make him wait a week before being able to give us all that because he was supposed to do it last week. But that was a joy. I did also have a reply about the shirts because we were trying to remember if a player had 3 different shirt squad numbers. And someone did reply to me, and I was trying to find that, and I still don't think I can find it, which is a shame, but it was a great reply. So I'm going to try and find that next week, but we have got an answer to the squad numbers thing, or a few. And also it'd be nice to do that with Steve here. I think that's it. Everyone happy? Everyone exhaled everything off their chests?
Yes, I feel better.
Do you feel better, Nick?
So much better. Just a recovery day plus this. I'm ready to go for Tuesday.
This is it. Aren't we all? I am especially. That is it for another On the Ball, the Norwich City podcast that this week is planning to read up on stress-related injury avoidance. If you're yet to do so, make sure you subscribe via your podcast player of choice. The pod is available free for everyone on your usual player. And we do stream the recording of the podcast live in video form on my social media channels. Have a search, and I'm sure you will find them. Ratings and reviews, wherever prompted, are always hugely appreciated. And if you want to get in touch with any questions or topic proposals, sling me a direct message on Twitter. @Michael J. Bailey is the handle. I will make sure I can find them, which I have struggled to do this evening. As for this evening's pod, a huge thank you for our guests tonight. Anna, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll do it again soon.
Of course.
Lovely. Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Nick, what a great debut. Thank you so much. Can we have you on again?
You certainly can.
I love it. Well, good luck. Good luck with whatever your weeks have in store. Hope it brings many wins and player development. And we'll get you back on the podcast very soon. But that is it for another edition of On the Ball. We'll be back next week for a fresh bout of Canaries Capers. Keep an ear out. It will not be on the Monday night. It will probably be over the course of the weekend at some point because Norwich are playing on the Friday night against Millwall. So Norwich are playing on the Friday night, and then we will probably do a podcast after the Friday night, but before the Monday, if that makes sense. In the meantime, enjoy that. Enjoy the Carabao Cup game, of course, against Bournemouth as well the following week. And until all of that happens, never mind the danger. And that is it. We are done for the podcast record. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Hope you enjoyed Anna and Nick, who are obviously outstanding. That was lots of fun. Thank you for all your comments and questions as well. Loads there. I think I just about kept on top of them all. So thank you. It's a real pleasure. Threw me a little bit that I was apparently commenting. So I got a bit confused by that. And I'm not entirely now convinced that it was the Adam Leventhal who was commenting either. Leave that with me. We'll see you next week. As I said, next weekend for the podcast. I don't know if we'll be doing it as a live stream. We might only do an audio one. I don't know. Keep an eye on Twitter and we will inform you, obviously. 2 games before then. I'll see you at Carrow Road for both of them. In the meantime, have a lovely Monday night and go and watch the rest of the Liverpool game if you can. I think it's quite evenly poised. See you later.